name is Sophia. I'm an art historian, artist, and architect from Munich, and currently doing my PhD at the RTTP. Within the seminar Current Issues with Vera Bühlmann in the summer semester 2023, we are focusing on articulations of vernaculars. In this video, I want to take you to a journey on the exploration of Tableaux Vivants as gestures of motionless reanimations. We experienced the revival of Tableaux Vivants, the so-called living pictures, during the corona pandemic. Two women from Amsterdam developed the idea of bringing the isolated art paintings into the private sphere and recreating them in the form of selfies. They posted the resulting photos on Instagram, and within a very short time they had many followers and imitators worldwide. This was associated with a revival of Tableaux Vivants. In common sense, it means imitations of existing paintings by persons maintaining the position. The genre of Tableaux Vivants emerged in the 18th century, we commonly say. It has an historical importance in Europe and the United States in the areas of photography, film, and contemporary art. But when we speak about the extended meaning, meaning human beings maintaining a pose for figurative purposes, we can find this gesture already in antiquity, with pantomime and schemata, as Plato describes in Cratylus as sequence of stereotyped movements. Tableaux Vivants want to escape from being captured. They are an acting, performing art. This makes it so interesting to look closer on its field of meaning, and I want to question what can we learn from Tableaux Vivants nowadays and what makes them so appealing for contemporary praxis. I want to stroll around its characteristics to get attuned with its connotations. I want to bring contradictory attributes and constellation to each other, starting with the predictability. Tableaux Vivants seem to strive against modern aesthetics with its snapshots enabling accidental images. Whereas, like in Tableaux Vivants, we encounter images that are under total control, so they can be actually foreseen. On the other hand, they are characterized by instability. Even though the actors are trying to freeze, there's a point when the posture cannot be held anymore and it breaks apart into living pieces. This results in a certain ephemerality, because they are not captured by the photographic apparatus. In this sense, the example in the beginning is not really a Tableaux Vivant. Interestingly, the term kurzweilig in English translated means also entertaining, amusing. So I have the question if this lack of stability enhances a disregard on the genre. Speaking about the framing, those Tableaux Vivants are not exhibited in a white cube, so there's no stabilization in time and space. There's an implicit boundary to real life, maybe a very low threshold for people to enter the existing art. But through the time-freezing gesture, it is creating an island of meaning. Everything that doesn't move is part of the image. Mentioning the term island, can we speak also about heterotopy in the sense of Foucault? Can historistic architecture be understood as Tableaux Vivants within dynamic cities? For example, the Berliner Schloss I have here. And it's a symbol of the imperial area, the imperial era. As an island, it unfolds a room of compensation, making the contemporary world an illusion. In contrast to the sculpture or building, we should not rotate around the constellations of persons. They force a fixation. of the spectator. We have a single viewpoint. There's a back and face directed to a public. So it's like in the cinema or theater, the spectator is passive, not moving. Tableaux vivants are a mediator between different medias. It has intersected with a number of other art forms like literature, theater, photography, cinema. This makes it so difficult to define them, but also interesting for cultural studies, for example. It's embedded in literature. There are many novels of the 19th century present with descriptions of tableaux vivants, for instance in Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Here the topos of painted or sculpted characters that come to life is mentioned, and we can also find tableaux vivants in E.T.A. Hoffmann or Edgar Allan Poe. So I come to the filmography, the mise en scène. The basic principle of the mise en scène is a particularly careful optical image composition according to play dramaturgical criteria. To this end, the scene image is almost modeled on a painting. It is staged in spatial depth, divided into foreground, middle, and background, and designed in a narrative, strategic, and meaning-generative way. An iconic example of this is, as you can see here, this movie from Orson Welles, 1941, Citizen Kane, considered today as a milestone in cinema history and one of the most innovative and important films ever produced. Because of its thoughtful pictorial composition, it was compared to a comic book, bringing together singular frames to build up a narrative. Here we see the protagonist's childhood home. Kane is shown in the background of the scene, while in the foreground his parents discuss his future. Kane appears visually trapped within the frame of a window. Also, Joanna Bark is referring on this intermediality of tableau vivant. She's calling it movement towards the film, back to the pictures. This challenges the paradigm of the modern as an age of dynamic movement. I want to speak about colloquialism. Edmund Wollner created this list of recommendations of subjects to imitate within the circle of the family. The tableau vivant has always been practiced by both amateurs and professionals, has appeared in a variety of settings, like in triumphal entries, plays, private homes. The staging of canonical paintings and sculptures played a crucial role in establishing bourgeois entertainment culture around 1900. They addressed the well-educated, art-loving middle class. But they are also concerning religious events. Here we can speak of reenactments. Reenactment is a reflection of the present, ultimately being a contemporary expression of the culture that has produced it. This example shows here the Oberammergauer Festspiele. This photo is from 2022. And here we can see that there's always a variation happening, but it reinforces the canon. It shapes a collective archive, a creating of a common sense. It's a good example of mimesis. An appropriation, translation, adjustment into the current context, and the details don't matter so much. Tableaux vivants are characterized by flexible contents. Then they are also flexible by its placelessness, by their placelessness. In the forensics, the name forensics is derived from the Latin forum, meaning public space. In forensics, reenactment has a long history. Police have long made those suspected of committing a crime reenact the events of which they are accused, often at the end of an investigation as an individual's admission of guilt. In forensic architecture's practice, reenactment takes a number of forms, but it's always a means of testing real-world phenomena, tracing what actually happened by testing constellations in simulation. This simulation, recreation from zero, differs from the act of masking, where an actual person can play out different roles. I mentioned this in the beginning, as it was a pioneer to the tableau vivant. During the Roman imperial period, pieces from Greek mythology were presented through pantomime. They changed the mask to embody different characters, so the change was focused only on the face. In tableau vivant, we confront all the body. The attitude is involved in the camouflage. So we come to the pose. The pose can be understood as a showing of the body and a showing with and through the body. So there's a question if there's an objectivation happening with the body. The body transformed to an object or even an artifact. Tableau vivant is the inversive act of someone standing model to be painted, and now we go back from the picture to the model standing. When we capture a picture, we confront passive objects. Building up the image with living bodies, we compose active images. Therefore, we can speak of change of observer-object relation and of an automation of the thing, the Gegenstand, literally holding against. When investigating on this autonomization activation, I came across this counter-argument of Roland Barthes in Reflections on Photography. However lifelike we strive to make it, photography is a kind of primitive theater, a kind of tableau vivant, a figuration of the motionless and made-up face beneath which we see the dead. Through his lens, through Roland Barthes' lens, in Tableau Vivant we experience mortification. I see a parallel to architectural design process. When an architect designs with animation software incorporating the dimension of time, the body is in constant movement, the architectural body. Then there has to be chosen one shot to be translated into the physical world, and this step results like the mortification of the vivid process behind. Then we create these immobile gestures. Speaking about immobility, we come to the iconic example of immobility, the still life. Fruits and dishes are not moving, so they are in their natural sense still. But figures are forced to stand still. It contradicts to the nature. So are we objectivating humans? Only with the loss of movement we realize what it entails. How should we name those living bodies? Are they actors, individuals, figures, displays, or now objects? This motionless and silent attitude appears in contemporary performance art. How does the artist perceive this motionless state in the play? We can retrieve it with Marina Abramovic in the play Night Sea Crossing with her partner Ulay in 1984. She says, "We were motionless for 7 hours a day, completely silent, sitting in a museum space. Nothing was happening on the physical level, but everything was happening on a mental level. When you do nothing, it's amazing what's happening. You deal completely with some other energy and you charge the space with another type of energy. Your perception moves beyond what is in front of you. You start seeing with your body 180 degrees, then 360 degrees. You become all eyes. Your sensitivity is so heightened by purifying yourself. I started to attain high states of meditation, the kind of transition from physical to mental body which I could not explain and only later learned can be achieved with the Buddhist tactics. So in the lens of Abramovich, this motionless state is actually enhancing the mental body to be animated. Here coming to flashification. Here one can find a parallel to the ancient myth of image animation. So the historical tableau vivant seems like a reanimation of a painting. There's a traditional thinking about painting as if a painting is only a sleeping moment and waiting to be awakened again. And then the translation into physicality is like the gesture to bring the painting back to life from inside. How should we think about the relation of movement and life? Then the living image was not actually alive, but it was animated. Here we can see Pygmalion, through his desire, how he transformed Galatea into a flesh and blood woman. Victor Storchita has pointed out that the revival of Galatea in Ovid's Pygmalion myth also takes place strongly through haptic elements, such as warmth, light and pressure, softness of the skin and pulsation. This pulsation brings us to the actual meaning of the word anima. In Latin, the word anima signifies breathe, soul or warmth. So it's more about breathing than physical displacement. This train of thought is inspired by Daniel Wiegand in its book Gewandte Bewegung of 2014. Thus, a picture can be animated even though it's motionless. And the pose can be seen as an in-between life and art. Polyglot created this new design formula within sculptures with diadumenos, created around 420 BC. It appeared before the viewer as a dynamic, living figure and at the same time testified to a variation of the basic canonical idea. The polyglotic figure bodies took on a new potential mobility. I like the word potential here. The figures lingered in an applied movement, were arrested and at the same time animated. What is the architect's relation to movement and animation? We experience the same within built architecture. It is motionless and yet breathing, in a state of tension to be actuated. Like the diadumenos, a building is not static in itself, but rather in an act of balancing with changing weight, loads, and natural forces. This mood board is meant to be vivid and rotating and unfinished. Thanks.